For the biggest of guests, from politicians to entertainers to content creators to whichever kind of a person you want to think that you'd want to see on the show, this is the place to be. Dr. Kirinyaga tonight.
Each and every Wednesday.
Well, President William Ruto will have to go back to the drawing board after a court sitting in Nairobi invalidated the appointment of his chief administrative secretaries. Just how did we get here? We have that plus more. Good evening. This is TV47 tonight. But first, let's have a look at the highlights. Tonight, President William Ruto faces a significant setback as the judiciary revokes the appointment of 50 chief administration secretaries.
That the current office of Chief Administrative Secretary, created by the first and fifth respondents and contained in the Kenya Gazette Special Issue number 12432, dated 12th of October 2022, and which announced the vacancies thereof, is unconstitutional.
The Kenya Association of Manufacturers is urging the government to prioritize local production of edible oils instead of relying on imports. And shock as 62-year-old mother of 6 administers sleeping pills to her children and grandchildren instead of providing them with food.
Nimekuwa nikiwapea hiyo piriton kwa muda fulani ambapo imefikia mahali watoto wenyewe hawakuwa wanaweza kwenda shule. Kwa shule kama wameenda siku mingi walikuwa wanaenda siku 3, siku nyingine wanakosa kwenda kwa sababu ya njaa na kulemewa kwa piriton.
Well, good evening. It is 2 minutes past 9 East African time. My name is Eric Munene. Our sign language interpreter is Catherine Simaloi. President William Ruto has once again faced a significant setback from the judiciary as the High Court invalidated the appointment of 50 chief administrative secretaries, deeming it unconstitutional. And as Mike Kagwongo reports, the 3-judge panel of the High Court said that the president failed to adhere to the prescribed rules for those offices. Have a look.
The appointments by President William Ruto were quashed this afternoon at the Employment and Labor Relations, dealing a big blow to the head of state and his administration. The appointments were challenged by the Law Society of Kenya and other interested groups. President William Ruto had earlier administered the oath of office to the 50 CASs after the National Assembly declined to vet them, claiming it lacked the legal authority to do so. The judges ruled that there was a degree of reasonable public participation in the recruitment of 23 CASs, but there was no public involvement in the constitution of the 27 additional office holders.
That the processes towards the establishment of the said office was in contravention of the Constitution, as well as sections 27 and 30 of the Public Service Commission Act, which succeeded. The court as such declared the office of the CS unconstitutional.
That the fourth respondent failed to undertake compulsory public participation in the process that resulted in the enactment of the SRC Remuneration and Benefits of State and Public Officers Regulations 2013.
The judges further ruled that even though the Court of Appeal had preserved the original office established by former President Uhuru Kenyatta in January 2018, the newly established office and its complement of 23 custodians could no longer take advantage of that suspension after the Public Service Commission abolished the office.
For the avoidance of doubt, the entire complement of 50 CASs is therefore unconstitutional.
However, Justice Ongundi argued that establishing the 23 posts was done according to the law, but adding the 27 in the Gazette notice was unconstitutional.
Based on the reasoning set out above, we do not think that it was the intention of the framers of the Constitution to have 50 CASs deputizing 22 cabinet secretaries.
PSC urged the court to save the 23 by suspending its decision as they move to the Court of Appeal.
We are definitely going to the Court of Appeal. We hope that justice will be served.
Kuna hii judgment ambayo imefanyiwa leo. Kuna ile judgment ilifanyiwa na Monica Mbaru. Kuna ile ilifanyiwa na Mrima. Sasa tunajiuliza, kwani koti zinatoa maamuzi tofauti?
The appointing authority, as we speak, is at liberty, even today, to appoint 23 CSs of his choice. But we will still be exploring the appellate option for purposes of clarity in law.
But the petitioners in the case, led by Eric Theory of LSK, opposed the application, saying the formal application should be filed so that responses can be filed.
But irrespective of what happens, I think it is very clear to all and sundry that the courts of this country will rise to the occasion, and indeed should always rise to the occasion when violations of the Constitution, and such serious violations of the Constitution, are perpetrated by the executive.
Catherine Wanjiku Waruguru.
The saga continues.
Now, the ruling leaves President William Ruto with lots of questions crisscrossing in his mind up to whether he will defy the court's order like his predecessor did in January 2018, with the only answer lying in the hands of the Court of Appeal. Mike Kagwango, TV47, from the Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi.
Well, thank you for that, Mike Kagwango. Now, the just released 2022 Kenya Demographic and Health Survey report has revealed, among other things, that about 1/3 of Kenyan households are headed by women. In the rural areas, 36% of households are headed by women, compared to 31% in the urban areas. The report further revealed that 43% of women agree that a husband partner is justified in beating wife for specific reasons.
Some troubling revelations from the 2022 Kenya Demographic and Health Survey report.
43% of women aged between 15 to 49 agree that a husband partner is justified in hitting or beating his wife or partner for specific reasons, and you can see them there. For example, for burning food. Can you believe that? Okay. For refusal to have sexual intercourse with him.
Other reasons given include arguing with the husband, refusing to cook, going out without telling him, coming home late, neglecting the children, and being unfaithful.
Kuna kupiga ila kurekebisha na kuna mambo mengine hawezi rekebisha kwa sababu imepita kurekebishwa, ni kuenda inastahili aende, hata kuna haja kupiga yeye.
Kama mwanamke amekosa, unamwambia polepole kuja tuongee, mnaongea kama mwanaume.
The number of men who have been physically assaulted by their wives dropped from 12% in 2014 to 8% in 2022.
Ukipata kwanza mwanaume amepigwa na mama kwa nyumba, aidha mambo ni mawili. Aidha huyu mwanaume ameolewa ama atekelezi majukumu yake ya nyumbani kama baba wa nyumba.
The most common committers of physical violence among women who have ever been married or have ever had an intimate partner are their current husband or intimate partner, followed by former husband or intimate partner.
34% have ever experienced physical violence by any perpetrator since the age of 15.
The most common committers of physical violence among women who have never been married or have never had an intimate partner are teachers, mothers or stepmothers, and fathers or stepfathers.
Now, still on the same, the Ministry of Health has highlighted plans to implement the findings of the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey report released today in order to ensure every Kenyan has access to quality healthcare service in line with the Universal Healthcare Coverage Program. Jackson Chacha tells us more.
Despite the efforts of the national government to implement the universal healthcare program, the gap between Kenyans who are able to afford quality healthcare services and those who are unable to afford it is widening. In its finding, the National Bureau of Statistics has noted that poverty is the main challenge towards the achievement of universal healthcare services. As one way of dealing with this, Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakhumicha has announced plans that will drive her team moving forward in ensuring that they implement the positive side of the report.
My ministry is spearheading the government's commitment of accelerating the attainment of universal health coverage. To optimally do this, the use of relevant and up-to-date data is a key requisite to enable evidence-based decision-making.
On the National Health Insurance Fund that has reported a low uptake, CS Nakhumicha has noted that she will continue cracking the whip on members of the board for them to facilitate service delivery to Kenyans.
This data has provided a good background for reforms at the National Hospital Insurance Fund as we structure how best to implement universal health coverage through primary healthcare networks. Actually, Professor Ndungu, now I have the confidence to stand and say I must clean up NHIF.
To the finance part of its implementation, the national government allocated 141.2 billion Kenyan shillings in the 2023-2024 financial year to the health sector, although from the findings of the report, there is a lot to be covered. While responding to this, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has said that the government will collaborate with the Ministry of Health in actualizing the findings of this report.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you that the government, through the National Treasury, is committed to allocating more resources, and I dare add, when they are available, to programs that will improve. Let me say, I am a realist. I don't promise things that are not there. So more resources, once they are available, they will be allocated, and that will help us improve the quality of life for the Kenyans.
With now the report at hand, it is the responsibility of both levels of government to implement its findings. Jackson Chacha, TV47, KICC, Nairobi County.
Let's switch gears a bit. The Kenya Association of Manufacturers has called on the government to consider manufacturing edible oils locally instead of importing. The stakeholders have decried that importation will deal a blow to local industries and further increase losses. Flora Limuki tells us more.
Just a few days after the High Court suspended a decision by the government to import 125,000 metric tons of edible oils, stakeholders in the manufacturing sector, led by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, have called on the government to create a level playing field in the interest of all stakeholders and the general public. The government approved the decision in November last year in a bid to stabilize prices after a prolonged drought that led to a shortage of household supplies and higher food prices. Recently, the Cabinet Secretary for Trade, Moses Kuria, has been on the hot soup after a media expose claimed that 5 companies, that is Bidco Africa, Golden Africa, Menengai, Pwani Oils, and Kappa Oils Refinery Limited had been enjoying a monopoly at the expense of the taxpayer. However, while appearing before the National Assembly's Committee on Trade, CS Kuria distanced himself from the edible oil importation scandal, claiming that cartels in the edible oil sector are apt to tarnish the image of his ministry. The Kenya Association of Manufacturers has now recommended to the government to consider and engage other stakeholders so as to promote local and regional competitiveness. Flora Limuki, TV47.
The Shanzu Court in Malindi, through Senior Principal Magistrate Yusuf Shikanda, has released Paul McKenzie's wife, Rhoda Mumbua, on 100,000 personal bond and 300,000 bond with a surety of the same amount. Meanwhile, other suspects will still be detained for 30 more days as investigations continue.
Approximately 2 months after her detainment, Rhoda Mumbua, wife to controversial Pastor Paul McKenzie, can breathe a sign of relief after the release from the state custody.
Rhoda Mumbua Mweu ataachiliwa kwa bondi ya binafsi ya $100,000 yeye atasign, na zaidi ya hayo pia atahitajika kuleta mdhamini wa kiasi cha $300,000 ili kuachiliwa.
Rhoda had been named a person of interest in the case against the controversial Pastor Paul McKenzie, who led a cult that killed hundreds of people.
Washukiwa hao wa 101 wa mwaka huu, akiondolewa mshukiwa 7 ambaye tayari ameaga, watazuiliwa kwa muda wa siku 3 ili kupatia upande wa mashtaka nafasi ya kuwasilisha maombi yote mengine ambao wangehitaji.
However, with the release, the court has ordered that she shall be required to visit a police station when called upon to do so. Paul McKenzie and other suspects will, however, still remain in custody for more than 60 days pending completion of investigation. Rhoda has been in custody alongside her husband and 16 other suspects, and the next phase of exhumation at Shakahola farm are set to begin. So far, 338 bodies have been found. Daniel Kihoro reporting for TV47.
On matters related to that, the Presidential Task Force on the Legal Framework Governing Religious Organizations has today held a public participation with members of the clergy and the public in a bid to decide whether churches should be regulated or not after the Shakahola incident. Chichi Josephine tells us more.
With a proper...
In the ongoing aftermath of the Shakahola deaths, a major debate began on whether or not churches ought to be regulated. A presidential task force took that debate to the people. These task forces are the moment wrapping up their series of public participation meetings and is set to table their findings to the president once done with their countrywide report.
Tunazunguka kaunti zote 47 tukisikiliza maoni. Tumekuwa leo Uasin Gishu na kwa kweli wametoa maoni yao. Tumeyasikiliza, ni maoni yao. Itafika wakati ambapo tutaketi chini kama jopo na kukusanya maoni yao yote.
However, before the report comes out, a section of the clergy are concerned over what they see as the undermining of religious integrity by the church's involvement in politics.
Tuna uhuru wa kuabudu, lakini tumeanza kuangalia kwa mambo ambayo yanatendeka hapa na pale katika taifa letu. Ni kama kitengo hiki cha dini kimeanza kupoteza mwelekeo, na tunahitaji mtu akutuambia kama tumepoteza mwelekeo.
Serikali na dini lazima kuwe na hiyo separation. We cannot have a state church.
What is actually happening is that people are out for money. And that's the thing that is driving, other gospel ministers to do errors like the Shakahola issue. That one, we say as a church, it has gone beyond what should have actually taken place.
Elsewhere, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi urged the church to be key drivers of peace in the country and support the government's initiative of uniting Kenyans.
It is gratifying that the Quaker Church in Kenya is working on a peace curriculum to be integrated in the national education curriculum. This is the way to go in influencing national discourse now and for posterity.
Attending the 2023 World Conference of the Friends Church at Kabarak University in Nakuru County, Mudavadi advised Kenyans to be on the lookout of emergence of false prophets and preachers.
It's very difficult to comprehend when somebody is a professor and they actually surrender all their years of work, abandon their families, and then follow a false prophet who has not even been to class 1. It beats logic. So where have we gone wrong as a society?
The Prime CS further called on the religious institutions offering theological courses to combine these courses with other skills-based courses in a bid to produce all-round graduates that will help in boosting the country's economy.
We may need to double up the theological component with 1 or 2 other skills so that that pastor, that preacher, will not just pass the word of God, but will be an extension officer on matters of economy and skilling the congregation that they go to.
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
Now, a Nairobi-based lawyer has gone to the High Court seeking to bar United Democratic Alliance, UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala and other leaders from regularly attending cabinet meetings convened by President William Ruto. Have a look.
In what could lead to another running in with the judiciary, President William Ruto's decision to allow 4 individuals to attend cabinet meetings could be dealt a blow after a lawyer challenged it in court. The lawyer argues that this move by the UDA party is unconstitutional and seeks to establish a parallel government structure. The petition also highlights that the leaders, including Malala, already hold significant positions within President Ruto's administration. According to the lawyer, UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala, Chair of the President's Economic Council David Ndii, National Security Advisor Monica Juma, and Women's Rights Advisor Harriet Chigai, who have been listed as the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th respondents respectively, are already serving in other capacities under the head of state, further arguing that this raises concern about their simultaneous involvements in cabinet meetings. The lawyer further criticizes the recent decision to administer an oath of secrecy to the 4 at State House in Nairobi. The move, the lawyer argues, was made without the necessary involvement of the National Assembly. The lawyer's petition highlights the alleged violation of several constitutional provisions, including Articles 212, 3, 10, 129, 130, 131, 132, 152, 153, 154, 156, and 258, which outline the substantive and procedural requirements of the Constitution. The lawyer has requested immediate attention from the court to consider the matter as urgent, considering that cabinet meetings take place weekly. President Ruto recently cleared Chigai to attend cabinet meetings, championing women's interests, while Malala was assigned the responsibility of advocating for the UDA party's manifesto during decision-making processes. Eric Matika, TV47.
Now, 6 years after the government implemented a ban on plastic products, it appears that the action acknowledges that the issue extends beyond the distribution of the items within the country. The primary cause lies in the import of plastic products from foreign countries, which has hindered the government's efforts to combat the situation. Our reporter Isaac Famba has compiled the following report.
6 years since the government banned the use of single-use of plastics in Kenya, environmental problem caused by plastic bags are still an issue getting in the way of an environmental conservation and recovery efforts across the country. Trans Nzoia County is one of such areas the finger of blame is being pointed as plastic bags are used in wrapping and packing goods in market which is believed have been illegally imported from Uganda, a country which does not have a similar ban on single use of plastics as Kenya.
Because we are on the border, people are smuggling them, and it is very challenging to deal with the transboundary trade. Most people, especially in the rural area, they are still using because these smugglers tend to sell this paper to people who are in the rural trading centers.
Tunakuwa na changamoto kwa vile karatasi hizi bado zinapenyeza kupita kwenye mipaka na zinatufikia. So labda ni ombi langu ya kuwa serikali iweze kushirikiana na serikali nyingine za Afrika Mashariki wawe na ile legislation ambayo itapiga ban karatasi hizi za plastiki katika nchi zetu zote za Afrika Mashariki.
Despite the efforts made by Environmental and Management Authority NEMA, vegetable and fruit vendors have been named as the main users of plastic bags, with many ignoring the ban and continue to use them in the market.
Yeah, there are those who are using, especially Mama Mboga, they still using these paper bags. And we have been doing some surveillance. Those we find still in possession with this plastic, we normally apprehend them and take them to court.
Isaac Famba, TV47, Trans Nzoia County.
Now, a 62-year-old mother of 6 from West Pokot County has shocked many after it was known that she was giving her children and grandchildren sleeping pills in substitute of food, decrying the high cost of living. The vegetable vendor is reported to have narrowly escaped death after overdosing before neighbors came to her rescue.
Jane Naliaka, a vegetable vendor from Kapenguria. Her children and grandchildren are lucky to be alive following an alleged overdose of sleeping pills for 2 consecutive days.
Kukula kwangu ilikuwa ni jirani alisaidia kukula. Nikafika mahali ikakuwa ngumu tena, nikafika kuamulia kwamba ikikosa kabisa nilikuwa napea watoto Piriton ili wapate usingizi.
Naliaka narrates her woes, talking of crippling cost of living and debt, a battle she has failed to win, given her meager earnings from the only source of income, vegetable vending. She speaks of the desperation that led to the choice to drug her family with sleeping pills.
Kwa siku tunakula mara moja kwa sababu ya hali ngumu ya maisha ambayo tunapitia. Tumejaribu panda shuka hakuna, mpaka imefikisha mahali penye kwa siku tunaenda tukikula mara moja. Tukishakula jioni tena tutakula jioni nyingine.
Meals have not been the only nightmare to find for Naliaka. The children under her care have since not been attending school. Neither has she been able to pay rent for the past 6 months.
Nimekuwa nikiwapea hiyo Piriton kwa muda fulani ambapo imefikia mahali watoto wenyewe hawakuwa wanaweza kwenda shule. Kwa shule kama wameenda siku mingi walikuwa wanaenda siku 3.
It took a sharp-eyed neighbor to notice that Naliaka's children were missing from the neighborhood play group, a rare incident. That was what broke open the heartbreaking circumstances faced by the family.
Anapewa watoto Piriton mbili, yeye mwenyewe amemeza 3 na ikawa. So alimeza Piriton siku 2. So siku ya 3 ikakuwa ngumu, ikashindikana. That's why tulikimbia, tukamrisk. Jamii mzima, plot hapa ikachanga kidogo, sukari kidogo, nusu, unga dini. Na hivi ndo maneno vile iko.
Quite sad. Now, a somber mood has engulfed Gichonjo village in Kirinyaga County after a 47-year-old man killed his wife on Sunday night after a quarrel over sold beans. The suspect is being held at Kiamutugu police station pending appearance in court. Rodam Batianya has filed the following report.
It is gloomy here in Gichonjo village, Kirinyaga County, following a recent incident that happened on Sunday night of a 47-year-old man who murdered his wife. There was tension as the police rescued the suspect from the jaws of the irate residents. James Kariuki, a neighbor, narrated how he heard commotions and screams coming from the suspect's house at 9:30 p.m.
Huyu ni jirani yangu mwenye ameua mtu. Mnamo saa 3:30 za jioni nilikuja na nikapaka gari yangu nikatoka kwa gate venye nilisikia kuna makelele nje.
Kariuki had a glimpse of the two fighting, with the suspect demanding to know where the deceased had allegedly sold his beans.
Nikapanda mpaka hapa juu kwa majirani. Kwa jirani wangu na ndiposa nikasikia wanaulizana maharagwe, kaulizwa maharagwe umeuza wapi?
At a maize plantation behind the kitchen, a pair of shoes could be seen revealing there was a struggle. According to Alexander Mugo, a village elder, the two have been having constant quarrels to a point that he advised the deceased to pack her belongings and leave the suspect's home.
Na walikuwa tu na furugu. Walikuwa wanakaa na furugu huku nyumbani. Hata kuna wakati mwingine waliniita nikakuja kama brokolinde nikawasaidia nikaambia huyu bimbi toa vitu zako uende. Na akatoa manguo zake na akaenda kufika hapa Gichonjo siku 2 ama 3 nikasikia wamerudi.
Harrison Dambiri, another village elder, blamed alcoholism and drug abuse as the major cause of domestic violence and murders in the region.
Ningependa ama maoni yangu ningependa hao watu wadogo hata wale wakubwa hii kitendo isitendeke tena hapa, na kwa vile mimi naona ile kitendo inatendeka sana, inatendeka sababu ya pombe. Pombe hapa asubuhi watu wanakunywa sana Gichonjo. Asubuhi. Hii warika hii ya mtu ambaye ameua huyu mtu, hii likaina kunywa pombe sana.
The body of the deceased has been moved to Kibugi Funeral Home, while the suspect is being held at Kiamatugu Police Station. Rhoda Mbatiani, TV 47.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Concerns have been raised over the influx of abandoned and children with disability in Juja, Kiambu County, suspected to be from neighboring countries. Marion Karimi, who runs a rescue and rehabilitation center for children with disabilities in the area, says that in the recent years, the number of physically challenged children, especially from Tanzania, has been on the rise. Have a look.
Hao watoto wamepitia mateso mengi na ndiposa wanatupwa kwa mitaa, na kwa sababu wale watoto tunachunga sisi wanarokotwa katika mitaa ambao tunaletewa na tunafanya kitu inaitwa rehabilitation, na tukiwa rehabilitate tu wanakuwa watoto wazuri. Na hiyo challenge ni kwa sababu wazazi hawana njia ya kukaa na hao watoto. Pia ukiwa na mtoto mwenye akona kilema, anakuwa ni kwa familia inakuwa ni tisho, kwa sababu baba ama mama akubali huyo mtoto. Wanaona wamepewa mtoto ambaye hawezi wasaidia, na ndio maana wanatupa. I don't condemn them, but I normally request them to I support them in one or the other. Kiomba pia kama serikali inaweza kama up na rehabilitation institution in the counties, in the sub counties. I advocate for that. Ili hao wazazi at least wao wanapata mahali pa kupeleka hao watoto, alafu jioni wanaenda kuwachukua na wapate pia kutembea kwenda kutafuta riziki ya watoto wale wengine.
Kuna haja kubwa sana ya serikali kuingilia kati na waweze kusaidia wazazi walio na watoto walemavu, na ili waweze kujisikia kuwa hata wao sio, they are not exceptional, wanaingia na kufanya kazi ya wanaingia katika shughuli zingine kama mtu wa kawaida. Na kwa hivyo jambo la pili, unapata ya kuwa shule za watoto walemavu sio mingi, na wale watu binafsi wanaosimama kutafuta nafasi ya kusaidia hawa watoto, unakuta zile shule ziko juu sana hali ya malipo yake.
The Mount Kenya University Foundation has participated in the 7th annual tree planting at Kaptagat Forest in Elgeyo Marakwet County. Led by their foundation director John Koigi, they aim at involving the youth and students in such activities that mitigate against climate change. Furthermore, government is planning to end deforestation by planting 15 billion trees by the year 2032.
Here we are at Kaptagat annual tree planting event, and one thing I believe is the fight against climate change cannot succeed unless collective actions from our society is brought on board. And the one thing I normally believe is also we youths are the major, are the ones actually that constitutes the largest part of our society. And that's why our involvement is credentialed and is needed in the subject.
As Mount Kenya University Foundation, we have established that there's a lukewarm involvement of youth in climate change matters, especially afforestation. And that's why we have taken up this initiative as custodians of nature to ensure that our students are more involved in planting trees and other issues that affect climate change.
Now, the ownership and administration of a 4,292-acre Modera farm in Mau Narok, Njoro sub-county of Nakuru County has been a long-standing source of conflict. Various individuals have reportedly invaded the farm, asserting their ownership, which has raised concerns among the farm's managers. Our reporter Chichi Josephine brings us the latest on that.
The controversial farm in Mau Narok is a part of an estate owned by the family of former Cabinet Secretary Mbiu Koinange. Francis Mwangi Njenga, one of the elected managers of the farm's activities, says the farm hosts more than 1,500 farmers who carry out various farming activities for economic growth in the area.
Shughuli ya shamba hili ni ukulima ambalo lina host wakulima zaidi ya 1,500 na shamba lenyewe limegawanywa katika sehemu kulingana na beneficiaries, lakini kubwa zaidi ni kwamba limeweza kuingiliwa na kuvamiwa kutoka kona fulani na ambazo watu wanadai kuwa wanalimiliki.
According to him, the farm has been subdivided as per the beneficiaries who are farmers in the area, as he quickly noted that some individuals have invaded the farm claiming to be the rightful owners, an issue that the managers have raised an alarm about.
Hakuja kuwa na dispute, huu ni uingiliaji, ni uvamizi ambao umefanyika kwa sababu shamba ni bayana this is a private property na ni private property ya Mbiu Koinange family. So there is no contention kwamba ni la huyu ama ni la yule, lakini kama vile watu wanaingia mahali kwa sababu ya interests na wanakuwa kwamba hawajaingia kwa njia ambayo sio sahihi, hivyo ndivyo establishment wenyewe ama shamba lenyewe limeingiliwa.
The move saw the managers call for a security meeting that eventually did not happen, as police from Mau Narok police station barricaded the main entrance to the farm.
Tulipokuja siku ya leo kwa minajili ya kufanya tu kikao hicho, tumepata vizuizi, tumezuiliwa kuaccess ama kuingia katika ofisi ya shamba hilo.
On the other end, John Kirinyaga pointed an accusing finger to individuals whom he calls invaders of the farm.
Tuko na shida ya usalama kwa sababu hawa wenye walipewa hii mashamba na koti hawawezi kuingia kwa mashamba yao. Hakuna mtu anaweza kuingia kwa sababu akiingia huko anakuta kwamba kuna watu wengine wameingia huko.
They are now calling on the government to step in and ensure that security is enhanced for the local farmers who should be undertaking the activities on the farm.
Hatutaki vita sisi hapo. Kama kuna order yote kutoka kwa upande ya familia, tuingie kwa shamba, sisi tuko tayari kuenda kufanya kazi.
Tumekuwa na back and forth ya miaka kama mitatu serious. Wakati mwingine ilikuwa ni uvamizi na watu wanarudi nyuma, lakini sasa hivi ndio wamejitokeza na kudai kwamba shamba nzima la kwao.
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
Now, private developers and investors in Kenya have welcomed the government's plan to move all its services into digital platforms, which will make public services convenient and easily accessible to all citizens. Speaking during the title deeds issuance program at Soya Dam in Murang'a, Harrison Murakaru, the CEO of Kamuthi Housing, said that the process will help to fasten the time taken for title deeds to be processed, unlike before.
A lot of effort in digitizing the processes that we are having in terms of titling, and this is going a long way, one, in shortening the period of time that people get to maybe do a search, verify the authenticity of the title. For part of the titles that we have gotten for our project, maybe in Thika, Buffalo Hills, you can find the registry was actually Nairobi registry digitized. You can be able to just scan the title, and you're able to get the details of the owner of that title, and that is a great step in these times when the in thing is technology. It's a great step in terms of easing the way of doing business, and also easing the transactions that we are able to do. Even when it comes even to payments of the rates and rent, it helps a lot in doing away with the cartels that have been terrorizing people when it comes to these processes.
Now to the latest from the world of business. Directors of tea companies from Kirinyaga County are against the sale of tea in the county, claiming that hawkers are luring farmers in order to buy tea at a throwaway price. Some of the members of the board have cautioned the farmers against being deceived to sell tea leaves to the hawkers, but instead to take them to the factories themselves.
Kuna kampuni imekuja hapa Kirinyaga inafanya mambo ya hawking. Na hii kampuni inatoka pande ya Embu na Meru. Na inanunua kilo moja kwa shilingi 25. Na itafanya mkulima wetu aingie kwa shida, kwa sababu sisi kama KTDA tunalipa more than shilingi 50. Kwa hivyo tumeambia mheshimiwa aende atuangalilie maneno ili hiyo kampuni isimamishwe.
There is one character called Jero whatever factory. He has introduced hawking of tea from Kirinyaga, buying tea from farmers, and as an agent called Makothe. Makothe also comes from Embu. And we know they have been restricted in other counties from coming, from hawking. What they are doing, they are buying that tea at 25 shillings, and we have been informed by the directors and the chairman that hakuna factory hata moja, the last bonus, haikulipa 50 shillings. So they are stealing 25 shillings from our people. Now, that means that we start guarding our farms the way some people are guarding their farms with avocado isikaibiwe. So what we are telling Jero, and what we'll be putting tea board on notice, tell us what license Jero factory is using to hawk tea from Kirinyaga.
Now, an income-focused investment strategy will significantly underperform a growth-oriented strategy given the current inflation rates. Investors are now being encouraged to circle around the increasing cost of commodities such as raw materials by capitalizing on market opportunities, which, according to Standard Chartered banks, half-year global market outlook will ensure maximum returns.
Kenya's huge technological advancements and strategic positioning continue to attract foreign investors, even with a weakened shilling and an unpredictable tax regime. This projection is further propelled by the projection that Africa will account for a quarter of the globe's population, and Kenya as the gateway to this robust growth.
Our view is that a more balanced approach might make sense, and hence a more calmer assessment of where markets are that balances both that upside and downside risks. And I think some of that comes through in the specific investment picks within CALM. So C in CALM really stands for capitalizing on market opportunities.
We allocate broadly, and that's a subject around diversification, which is something we always ask our clients that at all times stay diversified.
The Standard Chartered biannual report on the global outlook for investors has highlighted ways investors can take advantage of this, all the while navigating the current inflation rates.
By looking at opportunities to invest in certain areas like technology in the US, where there's a little bit of rally, but at the same time balancing it off by looking at some of the defensive sectors, particularly the healthcare sector.
Kenya will only be in a position to take advantage of these shifts and drive forward social and economic developments if foreign direct investment flows level out. For this, businesses and investors must leverage private capital for investments in the country's high-growth sectors, such as tech and green energy, and support structural reforms to improve the investment climate.
A big one we see there, of course, is in the bond market, where we believe, bond yields are not far from the cyclical highs, so they represent an attractive opportunity to lock in that yield for a longer period of time. But equally, it's an opportunity we think up to upgrade equities to a core allocation, which helps balance what we think are upside risks in the short term and maybe downside risks in the longer term.
Now, environmental, social, and governance principle adherence is an essential bargaining point for MSMEs looking towards capturing the lucrative foreign investments and partnerships. And this is according to the Kenya Bankers Association, who say adopting sustainable development practices for a business strengthens the overall resilience of MSMEs, which typically die before hitting the third year mark.
We believe in de-risking SMEs just to enhance their ability to access bank finance. And then above and beyond that, we want to see them to align on the ESG best practices. So one of the ways of doing that is just to bring on board partners to come and train our SMEs and your SMEs as well, to be able to understand their role in advancing ESG best practices. It would be important for them to understand their role in, of course, putting those principles in place to ensure that they are better placed in terms of addressing environmental degradation, they are able to address social risks associated with their operations, and to have better governance structures to address things like corruption, have better gender diversity.
ESG, in our opinion, is becoming increasingly important because it guarantees the sustainability of all businesses.